Breakfast time in black households during the 1980s was more than just the first meal of the day. It was a sacred ritual that prepared children not only with food, but with love, tradition, and cultural identity. While television commercials showed perfectly staged suburban breakfast tables with orange juice and cold cereal, black families were creating their own morning traditions rooted in generations of soul food heritage, economic wisdom, and community values. Mothers and grandmothers woke up early to prepare meals that would stick to your ribs and carry you through the school day, using recipes passed down through families and adapted to fit tight budgets. These breakfasts were prepared in kitchens filled with the sounds of gospel radio, the sizzle of cast iron skillets, and the voices of family members gathering before the day began. But what exactly filled those breakfast plates in black households during the 1980s? Here are 20 breakfast foods that black kids ate before heading to school, each one carrying memories of warmth, comfort, and the strength of family tradition. Grits with butter and salt. Grits were the foundation of countless black breakfast tables in the 1980s, served steaming hot in bowls, with a generous pat of butter melting into a golden pool in the center. Children would watch that butter slowly disappear into the creamy white grains, then add salt and sometimes a shake of black pepper. The texture was smooth and comforting, the kind of food that warmed you from the inside and stayed with you through morning classes. Mothers would cook grits in large pots on the stove, stirring occasionally to prevent lumps, often preparing enough for the entire family to gather around the table together. These grits represented more than just a cheap and filling breakfast option. They were a direct connection to Southern heritage and the agricultural traditions of black communities. Many families bought Quaker or Jim Dandy grits in the large cylindrical containers that became permanent fixtures in kitchen cabinets. The ritual of eating grits taught children about their cultural roots, even if they were growing up in northern cities far from the South. It was food that said you are part of something bigger than yourself. Fried bologna with eggs. The smell of fried bologna sizzling in a hot skillet could wake up the entire household on a school morning in the 1980s. Mothers would slice thick rounds of Oscar Mayer bologna and fry them until the edges curled up and the meat developed crispy, caramelized spots. The bologna would be served alongside scrambled or fried eggs, often with the grease from the meat, flavoring the eggs cooked right after. Kids loved the combination of textures, the crispy edges of the bologna giving way to the tender center, paired with fluffy or runny eggs, depending on family preference. This breakfast was born from economic necessity, but became a beloved tradition. Bologna was affordable, available at every corner store, and could feed multiple children on a tight budget. Black families transformed this humble lunch meat into a breakfast staple that kids actually looked forward to eating. It was not just about filling empty stomachs before school. It was about a mother's creativity in making something special out of limited resources, about the pride in providing for your children no matter what the circumstances, and about the warmth of sitting down together before everyone scattered to work and school. Cornmeal mush, fried cornmeal. Cornmeal mush was a breakfast that connected 1980s black children directly to their ancestors' survival strategies. Mothers would cook cornmeal with water or milk until it formed a thick porridge, then pour it into a loaf pan to cool overnight. In the morning, they would slice the solidified mush into thick pieces and fry them in oil or bacon grease until golden and crispy on the outside while remaining soft inside. Children would eat these fried cornmeal slices with syrup, butter, or even ketchup, depending on family tradition and personal preference. This dish represented the profound resourcefulness of black communities. Cornmeal was inexpensive and shelf-stable, making it a reliable option for families managing tight food budgets. The process of preparing it the night before also reflected the reality of working parents who needed to streamline their morning routines. Beyond economics, cornmeal mush carried the weight of history. It was food that enslaved ancestors had survived on, that sharecroppers had eaten, that migrants had brought north during the Great Migration. Eating it in the 1980s was an act of cultural continuity, even when children were too young to understand that significance. Salmon croquettes. Canned salmon transformed into crispy, golden croquettes was a breakfast that black kids in the 1980s either loved or learned to tolerate. Mothers would drain cans of bumblebee or chicken of the sea pink salmon, remove the bones and skin, though some families ate everything, and mix the fish with eggs, crackers, or breadcrumbs, chopped onions, and seasonings. They formed these into patties and fried them in hot oil until they developed a crunchy exterior. The smell of salmon frying in the morning was distinctive and unmistakable, filling the house with an aroma that neighbors could probably detect down the hall or across the yard. Salmon croquettes represented the intersection of African-American culinary creativity and economic reality. Canned salmon was affordable protein that didn't require refrigeration until opened, making it a pantry staple in many black households. The tradition likely evolved from times when fresh fish was either unavailable or unaffordable in urban neighborhoods. Mothers elevated this humble ingredient into something children would actually eat before school, serving the croquettes with grits, eggs, or bread. It was not just breakfast. It was a lesson in making dignity out of difficulty, in taking whatever resources you had and creating something your family could be proud to eat together. Scrapple. For black families in certain regions, particularly Philadelphia, Baltimore, and parts of the Mid-Atlantic, scrapple was a breakfast staple that kids ate regularly before school in the 1980s. This loaf, made from pork scraps, cornmeal, and spices, would be sliced thick and fried until crispy on the outside. The texture was unique, crunchy exterior giving way to a soft, almost grainy interior with bits of meat throughout. Children would eat it with eggs, grits, or syrup, depending on whether their family treated it as a savory or sweet breakfast item. Brands like Rapa and Haberset were fixtures in black households in these communities. Scrapple's place on black breakfast tables reflected both regional food culture and the economic realities of working-class communities. Like many soul food staples, scrapple originated from the principle of using every part of the animal, wasting nothing. Black families in mid-Atlantic cities adopted and adapted this Pennsylvania Dutch food into their own breakfast traditions. It provided affordable protein and represented the cultural exchange that happened in urban neighborhoods where different communities lived side by side. Eating scrapple before school meant being part of a specific place and time, part of a community that transformed European immigrant food into something uniquely Black American. Cream of wheat. The smooth, comforting texture of cream of wheat was a morning ritual in many black households during the 1980s. Mothers would cook it on the stove, stirring constantly to achieve that perfect creamy consistency without lumps. The iconic red and white box with the black chef on the front was a familiar sight in kitchen cabinets. Children would eat it hot with butter, sugar, and milk, or sometimes with cinnamon and honey. The warmth of the cereal spreading through your body on a cold morning before school was a sensation that stayed with you throughout the day. Cream of wheat represented both nourishment and the complicated relationship black communities had with representations of themselves in mainstream culture. The Rastas character on the box was a stereotypical image that many families didn't think much about at the time. It was just breakfast. Yet the cereal itself was genuinely beloved. A warm start to the day that filled children up and gave them energy for school. Grandmothers especially insisted on hot cereal over cold, believing that warm food in the morning was essential for health and strength. It was not just about calories. It was about the care that went into standing at the stove stirring, about sitting down to eat something warm before facing the world, about mothers ensuring their children were fortified for whatever challenges they would encounter. Biscuits with jelly or syrup. Homemade biscuits were a breakfast treasure in black households during the 1980s, though the reality was that most mornings saw families opening cans of Pillsbury Grands or buttermilk biscuits that would pop open with a satisfying burst. Mothers would bake these in the oven until golden brown, then serve them hot with butter melting into the fluffy interior, alongside Smucker's, grape jelly, strawberry preserves, or log cabin syrup. The smell of baking biscuits could motivate even the sleepiest child to get out of bed on a school morning. On special occasions or Sunday mornings, grandmothers might make biscuits from scratch, kneading the dough and cutting perfect circles with a glass or biscuit cutter. These biscuits carried deep cultural significance beyond their role as a vehicle for jelly. They connected black children to Southern cooking traditions, even in northern cities. The act of breaking open a hot biscuit, watching steam rise, and slathering it with butter was a sensory experience that created lasting memories. Biscuits were also economical, whether canned or homemade. They stretched the food budget while providing filling, comforting food. It was not just about feeding children before school. It was about preserving traditions in the midst of busy modern life, about creating moments of warmth in the morning rush, about ensuring that even on a Tuesday in February, your children had something that felt like love on their breakfast plate. Fried chicken leftovers. Cold fried chicken from the night before was a perfectly acceptable breakfast in black households during the 1980s, especially on mornings when time was short or when a particularly good batch of chicken had been made for Sunday dinner. Children would eat chicken legs or wings straight from the refrigerator, the cold meat paired with a slice of bread or a biscuit. Some mothers would quickly reheat the chicken in the oven or even fry it again briefly to warm it up and restore some crispiness. The sight of kids heading to school with a satisfied look of someone who had eaten fried chicken for breakfast was not uncommon in black neighborhoods. This breakfast practice reflected the practical wisdom of black household management. Why waste time cooking a full breakfast when perfectly good food sat in the refrigerator? Why let children go to school hungry when protein was readily available? It also demonstrated the central role that fried chicken played in black culinary culture. It was not relegated to special occasions, but was integrated into everyday life. Eating chicken for breakfast taught children that food rules were flexible, that nourishment mattered more than conventional meal timing. It was not just about convenience. It was about the confidence to feed your family in ways that made sense for your life, regardless of what mainstream culture said breakfast should look like. Oatmeal with cinnamon and sugar. A steaming bowl of Quaker oats was a breakfast that many black children ate regularly before school in the 1980s, especially during cold months. Mothers would cook the oats with water or milk on the stovetop, or they might use the instant packets that came in flavors like maple and brown sugar or cinnamon and spice. Children would add their own sugar, cinnamon, butter, and milk to customize the taste and texture. Some families cooked their oatmeal thick and hearty, while others preferred it thinner and more porridge-like. The warmth of the bowl in your hands and the filling weight of oatmeal in your stomach prepared you for winter mornings waiting for the school bus. Oatmeal represented both practical nutrition and maternal care in black households. It was inexpensive, shelf-stable, and genuinely healthy. Mothers knew it would provide lasting energy through the school morning. Grandmothers in particular insisted on oatmeal, often sharing wisdom about how it would stick to your ribs and keep you full until lunch. The ritual of eating hot cereal together at the kitchen table, even if just for 10 minutes before everyone rushed out the door, created a sense of family cohesion. It was not just about the oats. It was about starting the day with something warm and nourishing, about the care that went into preparing it, about mothers ensuring their children were protected against the cold and hunger. Pancakes with syrup. Weekend mornings in black households during the 1980s often meant the smell of pancakes cooking on a griddle. But on school days, quick pancakes from Aunt Jemima or Hungry Jack mix provided a faster breakfast option. Mothers would mix the batter quickly, pour circles onto a hot skillet or electric griddle, and flip them when bubbles appeared on the surface. Children would stack them high, add pats of butter between each layer, and pour log cabin Mrs. Butterworth's or Aunt Jemima syrup until the sweet liquid pooled on the plate. Some families added chocolate chips or blueberries to the batter when money allowed, but plain pancakes with syrup were satisfying enough. Pancakes occupied a special place in black breakfast culture because they felt like a treat even when they were made from a simple mix. The act of making pancakes, even on a busy school morning, was a gesture of love and care. Fathers sometimes took over pancake duty on weekends, making it a family activity where children might help pour batter or watch the bubbles form. The problematic imagery on Aunt Jemima products was present, but not often discussed. It was just the pancake mix that everyone used. It was not just about filling hungry stomachs before school. It was about creating moments of sweetness in ordinary days, about the small luxuries that made children feel special, about transforming a rushed morning into something that felt more like a celebration. Cheese eggs with hot sauce. Scrambled eggs mixed with shredded or sliced cheese and topped with hot sauce was a breakfast that fueled many black kids through school days in the 1980s. Mothers would scramble eggs in butter or margarine, add American cheese singles or shredded cheddar, and let it melt into the eggs. Children would shake Louisiana hot sauce, Frank's Red Hot, or Texas Pete over their eggs, the bright red drops adding both heat and flavor. The combination of creamy, cheesy eggs with the vinegary bite of hot sauce created a taste that woke up sleepy taste buds before school. This was often served with toast or biscuits for soaking up the runny parts. This simple breakfast reflected the flavor preferences of black communities, where hot sauce was a pantry staple used on everything from eggs to pizza. The presence of hot sauce at the breakfast table taught children early that food should be boldly flavored, that seasoning mattered, that adding your personal touch to a dish was not just acceptable, but expected. It also demonstrated economic wisdom. Eggs were affordable protein. Cheese added richness and calcium. And hot sauce transformed the ordinary into something crave-worthy. It was not just about eggs. It was about teaching children that even simple food could be delicious with the right seasoning, about instilling pride in flavor and spice, about starting the day with food that had character and personality. Pork chops with eggs. A fried pork chop on the breakfast plate was not unusual in black households during the 1980s, especially in Southern influence families or when mothers wanted to ensure their children had substantial protein before school. The pork chops would be seasoned with salt, pepper, and garlic powder, then fried in a cast iron skillet until golden and crispy on the outside. They were served alongside scrambled or fried eggs, with the pork chop grease often used to cook the eggs for maximum flavor. Some families served this with grits or toast, creating a breakfast that would sustain children through long school mornings and active play during recess. This breakfast demonstrated the soul food principle that protein should anchor every meal, that children needed substantial food to thrive, not just sugary cereals advertised on television. It also reflected the reality that black mothers often prepared similar foods throughout the day. The boundaries between breakfast, lunch, and dinner foods were more fluid in black households than mainstream culture suggested. Pork was affordable and flavorful, and frying was the cooking method that made everything taste better. It was not just about feeding children before school. It was about ensuring they had the strength and energy to succeed, about providing food that demonstrated a mother's commitment to her children's well-being, about making sure that no black child left home hungry or unprepared to face the day's challenges. Toast with butter and sugar. The simple combination of white bread toasted until golden, then spread with butter and sprinkled with sugar and cinnamon was a quick breakfast that many black kids grabbed before running to catch the school bus in the 1980s. The butter would melt into the hot toast, creating a base for the sugar to stick to. And when you bit into it, you got the crunch of toast followed by the sweetness of sugar mixed with cinnamon. Wonder Bread or store-brand white bread was toasted in electric toasters that sat on kitchen counters. And children often made this breakfast themselves when mothers were already at work or when time was extremely short. This breakfast represented both economic reality and the creativity of making something special from basic ingredients. White bread, butter, and sugar were pantry staples in almost every household, regardless of income level. The addition of cinnamon elevated it from simply eating bread to having something that felt like a treat. For children in households where parents worked early shifts or multiple jobs, knowing how to make your own toast with butter and sugar was an important independent skill. It was not just about carbohydrates and sugar before school. It was about self-sufficiency that black children often learned young, about making the best of what you had, about finding sweetness even in the simplest circumstances. Liver mush or liver pudding. In North Carolina and surrounding southern states, liver mush or liver pudding was a breakfast meat that many black children ate before school in the 1980s. This loaf made from pig liver, cornmeal, and spices would be sliced and fried until crispy on the edges, developing a savory, slightly metallic taste that was definitely an acquired flavor. Hunter's or Mac's liver mush were common brands. Children typically ate it with eggs and grits, and many kids who grew up eating it developed a lifelong love for this regional specialty. Those who didn't grow up with it often found the idea off-putting. But for kids raised on it, liver mush was just normal breakfast food. Liver mush exemplified the soul food principle of using every part of the animal and the regional food traditions that varied across black communities. Like scrapple in the mid-Atlantic, liver mush was specific to certain areas, and the black families who lived there integrated it into their breakfast rotation. It provided affordable protein and connected children to specific place-based traditions. Eating liver mush before school meant being part of a particular regional identity within the broader black American experience. It was not just about nutrition or economy. It was about the diversity of black culinary traditions across different regions, about foods that connected you to a specific homeland, about the pride in eating something that outsiders might not understand, but that your community claimed as their own. Sausage links or patties. Pork sausage was a breakfast staple in black households during the 1980s, whether in link form like Jimmy Dean or Tennessee Pride, or as patties made from bulk sausage. Mothers would fry them in skillets until browned and cooked through, the meat releasing its flavorful fat that would then be used to cook eggs or flavor grits. The smell of sausage cooking in the morning was powerful and appetizing, guaranteed to wake up sleepy children. The sausages would be served alongside eggs, grits, or biscuits, providing protein and flavor that made breakfast feel substantial and satisfying before a long school day. Sausage represented a step up from bologna or other budget meats. It was a sign that the family was doing okay financially, that there was enough money to buy meat specifically for breakfast. The ritual of eating sausage, eggs, and grits together at the kitchen table created moments of family connection before everyone dispersed to school and work. Some families bought turkey sausage when health consciousness began entering mainstream culture in the late 1980s, but most stuck with traditional pork sausage for its superior flavor. It was not just about protein before school. It was about the sensory experience of breakfast, about food that tasted rich and indulgent even on an ordinary Tuesday, about mothers providing meals that made children feel cared for and valued. Rice with butter and sugar. Leftover white rice from dinner transformed into breakfast by adding butter, sugar, and milk was a common morning meal in many black households during the 1980s. Mothers would reheat the rice quickly on the stove or in the microwave as that technology became more common. Then children would add their own butter, sugar, and milk to taste, creating a sweet, creamy porridge-like breakfast. Some families added cinnamon or vanilla for extra flavor. The rice was filling and warm, providing carbohydrates and comfort that carried children through the morning at school. This breakfast exemplified the resourcefulness and waste-not philosophy of black household management. Rather than cooking rice specifically for breakfast, mothers repurposed leftovers, saving time and money while still providing something warm and nourishing. It also reflected the influence of various cultural traditions within black communities. This breakfast appeared in households with Caribbean heritage where rice was a daily staple. The practice taught children that food had value beyond its initial serving, that creativity in the kitchen meant seeing potential in what others might throw away. It was not just about using leftover rice. It was about the wisdom of elders who knew how to stretch resources, about teaching children not to waste food, about making breakfast happen even when the cupboards were not fully stocked. Bacon with eggs and toast. The classic combination of crispy bacon, eggs, and butter toast was a breakfast that appeared regularly on black family tables in the 1980s, especially on mornings when mothers had a bit more time or when they wanted to send children to school with a special breakfast. The bacon would sizzle in the pan, filling the kitchen with its irresistible aroma, cooked until perfectly crispy or slightly chewy, depending on family preference. Eggs would be scrambled, fried, or occasionally poached, and white or wheat toast would be buttered and served on the side. This was the breakfast that felt most like what you saw on television, making it feel somewhat special even though it was made from simple ingredients. Bacon held a particular place in black culinary culture. It was not just breakfast meat, but also a flavoring agent used throughout soul food cooking. Having bacon specifically for breakfast, rather than saving it to season greens or beans, indicated a certain level of financial comfort. The breakfast also represented a point of cultural intersection where soul food traditions met mainstream American breakfast conventions. Black families made it their own through seasoning eggs with hot sauce, using specific bread preferences, or serving it with grits instead of hash browns. It was not just about bacon and eggs. It was about participating in a broader American food culture while maintaining your own identity, about providing children with food that felt both familiar and aspirational, about starting the day with a breakfast that said we are doing well. Pop-Tarts, toasted or cold. Kellogg's Pop-Tarts represented the intersection of convenience and modern American food culture in Black households during the 1980s. Children would either toast them in the toaster until the edges got crispy and the filling warmed up, or eat them straight from the package when running late for school. Flavors like strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and frosted cherry were favorites. The silvery foil wrapper would be torn open quickly, and kids would eat Pop-Tarts while getting dressed, while watching morning cartoons, or while walking to the school bus stop. Mothers might not consider them a real breakfast, but they were better than nothing when time was extremely short. Pop-Tarts in Black households represented both assimilation into mainstream American consumer culture and the reality of busy families where convenience sometimes won over tradition. They appeared alongside homemade biscuits and grits in the same pantries, creating a dual food culture where old and new existed simultaneously. For children, Pop-Tarts felt modern and exciting, something that connected them to the wider world beyond their neighborhood. For parents, they were a compromise, not the breakfast they wished they could provide every morning, but something that ensured children ate before school. It was not just about toaster pastries. It was about the negotiations Black families made between tradition and modernity, between what grandmothers thought breakfast should be and what working parents could realistically provide, between cultural heritage and the demands of contemporary American life. Fried Spam with eggs. Hormel Spam sliced thick and fried until the edges caramelized was a breakfast protein that many Black kids ate before school in the 1980s. The canned meat would be cut into slices about a quarter-inch thick, then fried in a skillet until both sides developed a golden brown crust. It would be served with scrambled or fried eggs, and often with grits or toast. The salty, savory flavor of Spam paired well with eggs, and the fact that it came from a can that didn't require refrigeration made it a reliable pantry staple for families managing tight budgets or those where parents worked irregular hours. Spam carried complex cultural meanings in Black communities. It was undeniably cheap and shelf-stable, making it practical for working-class families. It was also associated with poverty and struggle, the kind of food you ate when times were hard. Some families embraced it proudly, transforming it into a breakfast they genuinely enjoyed. Others saw it as a necessary but temporary measure until finances improved. Children usually loved it. The salty, fatty flavor appealed to young palates, and they did not yet carry the class associations that adults might have felt. It was not just about fried Spam. It was about the economic realities that shaped Black breakfast tables, about making dignity out of difficulty, about feeding children with whatever resources you had while still ensuring they went to school with full stomachs. Instant grits. While traditional stovetop grits required time and attention, instant grits from packages allowed busy Black mothers to serve this cultural staple even on the most hectic school mornings in the 1980s. Quaker instant grits in the small packets could be mixed with hot water and ready in minutes. Children would add butter, salt, and sometimes cheese to create a quick breakfast that still maintained a connection to Southern food traditions. The texture was not quite the same as slow-cooked grits, slightly more grainy, less creamy, but it served the purpose of providing warm, filling food before school in a fraction of the time. Instant grits represented the tension between maintaining tradition and adapting to modern life pressures. Grandmothers might look down on instant grits as inferior to real grits cooked properly on the stove, but working mothers appreciated the time saved when getting multiple children ready for school while preparing for their own workday. The product itself demonstrated how food companies were adapting soul food staples for convenience culture. For children, instant grits still meant grits. They were eating what their ancestors ate, even if the preparation method had evolved. It was not just about convenience food. It was about the negotiations between preserving cultural traditions and meeting the demands of modern life, about working mothers doing their best to maintain connections to heritage while managing overwhelming responsibilities, about finding ways to keep feeding children foods that said you are part of this culture even when time was impossibly short.